Hello everyone, welcome to the Earful Tower. This is a podcast all about Paris. My name's Oliver G. I'm an Australian guy living in this city, telling stories, sharing interesting people's stories from the City of Light. In fact, you might say I'm introducing you to the people who make the City of Light shine. And today it is a hot day in Paris, so hot that history is being made. I got the window open. You might be able to hear the kids from the playground screaming in the background. But I'm also not wearing the headphones, the big old headphones. Too hot for the headphones, so I don't even know what I'm sounding like. We'll all have to just be guessing here. But today's an interesting episode. But before we get to it, I want to talk about the sponsor. This is a Thursday episode. That means it's being brought to you by Fat Tire Tours, fattiretours.com. And at the end of the episode, I'll be talking to you about how I did the walking tour of the Latin Quarter with them this week. I'll tell you all about that tour at the end. But just to give you a little something to think about, if you want to do one of their tours, and they do bicycles, Segway tours, climb the Eiffel Tower tours, out to, it sounds like I'm rapping, out to the Giverny, Versailles, everything, you get 10% off. And you get that 10% off if you put in the code word Earful when you're about to pay for it. There's a little box down the bottom left that says, hey, you got a little bit of a code that you want to use here? And you say yes, Earful, 10% off. It's crucial to me that you do that because it lets them know that this is a partnership worth doing. It'll make them think, hey, this Oliver guy's got a little bit of clout, so it helps me a lot. Do that. Now, I want to talk about today's episode with Christophe, who is an auctioneer, one of the head auctioneers down at Lucien. And, well, first I should start with a story because it's a good one. About 2 months ago, I was walking around in the 9th arrondissement and I'd heard about this quartier, this quarter in Paris called Drouot, which I find hard to pronounce. But let me spell it for you, Drouot. And in this quarter, sort of southern Pigalle, it's all antiques, auction houses, that kind of stuff. And I'd never even been there, but I stumbled upon it one day and decided to go into this big main sort of auction room. And what fell in front of my eyes was one of the most beautiful collections of Paris memorabilia that I'd ever seen. It turned out it was an elderly lady who'd recently died. She'd spent her whole life collecting sort of street signs and, things like, at the front of a barber shop, they might have some scissors. A big set of scissors up there on the wall. She'd collected those kind of things over her lifetime, and today's guest, Christophe, was the guy who was selling them in this big sale. So I was in there, I was walking around, I shared some pictures on Instagram. They got in contact, we ended up chatting, and I ended up meeting with Christophe, and we did a live video in that auction room, which is it was a really beautiful collection, and I encourage you guys all to go and check that out after this episode. But let's see, what happened was I got talking to Christophe, however you want to say it. I got talking. He's an extremely busy man, and I said I'd love to interview you one day for the podcast. Eventually, we found a time in a cafe. I met him in a cafe, and the reason I bring this up is twofold. Firstly, I think it's fun to do the episodes in the cafe. It gives you a little sort of taste of what Paris cafe life is like, but also because it's a little bit of noisy, a little bit of background noise. So if you're listening this on headphones, you might feel like you're kind of in the cafe with us. If you're listening to it on the loudspeaker, I don't know, I'm interested. I want your feedback. But you'll hear, waiters in the background, plates clinking around. You hear someone drops coins at some point in the middle of it. It's very lively. And just a word of warning, the first couple of minutes are not really representative of the rest of the interview because I think they were cleaning some dishes near us in the first couple of minutes. So it calms down after that. Anyway, so I talked to Christophe. You'll hear it all in the interview, but I talked to him about how Parisians sort of learned to love antiques, something he says is quite a new phenomenon. The importance of French heritage, how Paris is being destroyed before our very eyes, and one listener question about what antiques to invest in if you're going antique shopping in Paris, and indeed how to do it. So I'll leave you with that. Before we get into the episode, I haven't done this for a while, I'm going to dedicate this episode to a listener who I sort of spontaneously met in Paris the other day, Catherine Barnett, who said something very lovely that stuck with me. She's a Patreon supporter, and she said, Oliver, I consider my Patreon support like buying herself and me a coffee every month as a thanks for the show. And I hope you're not actually buying a coffee for me every month because you live in Australia and that would just sit there and get cold. But I like the concept. If any of you other guys out there are thinking of doing the same, it means an awful lot to me if you sign up on Patreon. Patreon.com/The Earful Tower. And I'm going to talk to you at the end of the episode about some exciting developments for members of this show. Now, on with the episode in La Favorite Café, down in the Central Marais district. Here's Christophe, antique expert. You're listening to the Eiffel Tower. Let's do it. Christophe, welcome to La Favorite Café.
Thank you.
This is your regular spot, or
No, one of them.
okay?
One of them.
And how did you choose it? What makes this a good cafe?
Well, I like the atmosphere. People are kind.
Yeah.
It's a bit noisy, but people are very kind.
I think
and you
it-
can meet other people very easily here.
Right. What do you mean? People just talk to each other
Yes.
in the cafe?
Mostly at the terrace.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. They talk to each other.
Yeah.
Even if you don't know them.
Is this the kind of place that's really expensive for drinks as well?
No.
Because we're on Rue Rivoli, right?
Yes.
Isn't that
It's
one
not
of
very
No.
expensive.
Okay.
It's very normal.
Okay.
It's very classical.
So let's talk a little bit about antiques.
Yes.
So when you and I met, you were in the middle of a big auction of it was Paris sort of memorabilia or paraphernalia. And how did that auction go?
Very well. We made 50 world records
50 world records.
Yes.
What did you make? Like what?
because the prices we obtain have never been obtained in the world. I think that because of the crowd we had at the exhibits and the advertisements we had on that sale, thanks to journalists like you.
Thanks to me coming in and filming with you on that day.
Yes, many people bid all over the planet.
Right.
Yes, but mostly Parisians have bought 80% of the bidders were Parisians.
Interesting.
And it's very new for me, because when I started those sales, most of the clients were foreigners,
Right.
and Parisian people were a bit didn't take care of this type of sales. But now, because of the way we make a lot of noise about those sales, they understand that the heritage is very important, and they come in mass, they come in very big numbers, and it's a pride for me, a very big pride.
So when did you start doing this?
10 years ago.
So 10 years ago, Parisians weren't so interested, and now it's turned around.
Yes.
Okay.
I think because of destructions in Paris, because of small catastrophes, the mayor of Paris doesn't take care a lot of heritage.
Anne Hidalgo, you mean?
Yes.
She doesn't care about heritage.
No, not at all, not a lot. She destroys a lot of very beautiful buildings in the east of Paris,
Okay.
in popular boroughs,
Really?
in the east.
Like
yes.
where? What do you mean the east? You mean like the...
In 19th, 18th, 12th, 13th boroughs, districts.
Yeah.
And many Parisians do not like that at all,
Right. What do you think?
I am among them.
Yeah.
I'm very bitter,
Yeah.
you say.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm like them. I understand more and more how important the architecture, the urbanism
Yep.
of the city is important to us. This is where we live. This is the place where we live. So destroy things to replace them by awful concrete buildings is a nonsense. When modern buildings are pretty and creative, it's okay. When they are very banal, it's just a shame for me and to all those Parisians who take care of their heritage now.
Do you think you are a fan of yesterday a lot more of tomorrow?
Oh no, not at all. I'm a fan of modern architecture. I can tell you a lot about that.
Yeah.
I'm fond of architecture,
Yeah.
but not business architecture.
Sure.
I don't care of offices building. Banal offices building you can find everywhere, all over the planet. You have the same in Australia,
Sure.
in England.
Yeah.
I don't want Paris to become like London. The River Thames is totally destroyed from Westminster to Greenwich. Everything has been destroyed and replaced by very banal buildings. There is not you can't see any creation on the Thames River. And I don't want Paris to become like that.
Do you think it is becoming more like London?
No, the luck of Paris is that it's classified at the World Heritage List, by the UNESCO.
Yeah.
But
the whole city is?
No, a part of the city, the center of the city on the Seine River, but the extremities are not.
Right.
So the mayor can do anything he wants on this perimeter.
A lot of people who come on this show say that they're a fan of the work that Anne Hidalgo does in turning car lanes into bicycle lanes and that kind of stuff.
Yes, but it's a detail for me. Every mayor in the world do that. In big cities, even in New York now, you have a bicycle lanes.
Yeah, sure.
It's very classical of today. But the rest is 90% of the work of the job of a mayor is to take attention to the people living in the city, but not only because of pollution, And when you building in concrete, you pollute, because concrete takes the hotness of the weather during the day and put it back by night, and it's very dangerous for the planet, So it's very paradoxical,
Sure.
It's very nice to have bicycle. I ride bicycles, and I take the metro mostly, but I'm attached to my city. I attached to what it is, and I'm attached to the way Paris is created. We have talked about that. A very bad design of a litter bin, of a bench, of a street lamp is for me something that is scandalous in Paris, because Paris has invented urban furniture. So today, put a street lamp like a street lamp you can find in Tokyo or in Shanghai. For me, it's not interesting.
Right. I remember when we met, and I'm glad that coffee machine has stopped in the background. I remember when we met and filmed the video in the auction house. You were a big fan of the Paris street lights.
Yes.
And the bits, the surrounding underneath the trees and the city.
Yes.
Yeah.
The buttons. Yes.
And do you find that you're still a fan of those things in Paris as you walk around today in general?
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah.
I'm fond of the decor of the streets. It's like when I walk in Paris, like in a decor of a movie.
Right.
A play, a theater play.
So tell me, we're going to talk about antiques, and
Yes.
I'm very conscious that they turned the music off for us to have this interview, so it would be a crime if we didn't talk about antiques before
Okay.
Is that it coming back on? Oh no, that's an ambulance. Okay, so it's great because the listeners will feel they're in Paris right with us now. But let's talk about people who shopping for antique things. A lot of people listening are maybe Americans or Australians, British people, afraid of the French language that, you're doing the process in French. The whole process
Yes.
maybe frightens them.
Yes.
What are your tips to foreigners for getting into the antique world?
Well, Paris is an international city, so we do speak several languages in auction rooms in Paris.
Right. You speak a few languages, don't you?
Yes.
What do you speak? German as well, was it?
Yes, and Italian too.
Right.
Every sales are not translated in English.
Merci.
But when you bid in prestigious sales, you can see the translation of numbers of prices on a panel behind the auctioneer. So it's very convenient. And when you bid from your computer, you understand very well what happens.
It's pretty straightforward.
And it's translated in dollars,
Right.
in pounds.
So maybe it's not so
yens.
difficult at all.
No, not at all.
But just a brief aside, a waiter has come and brought us empty cups with
Yes.
jugs filled with
Hot chocolate.
this looks like quite thick hot chocolate, not not so milky, more chocolate.
Yes, there is more chocolate than milk.
Yeah. Healthy?
I don't think it is that.
So let's walk through exactly where to start. What are the items that people, are popular among antique shoppers? What are the things that people are typically buying?
Well, the market is changing. It's very hard to answer to your question because the market changes very, very quickly every day, every month, every year, every 10 years. So people who buy at auctions today in Paris are not the same people that bought in the same sales 20 years ago, 10 years ago. For example, average furniture is not in fashion anymore. Average antique furniture is not in fashion anymore. But most of bidders in Paris buy things from the 30s, creation of the 30s, mostly French 30s creations.
So what does that include?
It includes objects of art like jewelry, like armchair, chairs, sofas, tables, and lamps, and they love it. They love that. But I think I do not think. I'm sure that it's the same all over the planet. In New York, they are completely fond of French furniture of the 30s. In London too. I think in Australia, rich people in Sydney too. And that's what is mostly in fashion.
Why the 30s? What's wrong with the 20s?
Because our epoch is very paradoxal. Like we are talking about the politics of the mayor of Paris, but which is paradoxal. But what is paradoxal in our epoch is that a part of the population likes to have a lot of things at home, many things at home. That they are afraid of emptiness. But another part of the population, which is a minority, likes, on the contrary, things that are completely empty. They are completely
like minimalism.
Yeah, minimalist. I'm sorry.
No, it's hard to say in any language.
Yes, and they like white walls, few pieces of furniture, and minimalist pieces of furniture. And the 30s, the French 30s, have brought that to the decorative arts.
Right.
So they're a part of the population buys that, and young people, people of around 30 years old, they buy things from the 40s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and they start to buy things from the 90s.
Already?
Yes, already. Yes.
That makes even me feel old.
Yes, right. Things go very quickly.
Wow. Okay, we got a question from a listener called Peter. And he wanted to ask you, what should I buy today to invest in that will be an antique of the future?
It's very hard.
The €1,000,000 question.
It's very hard to answer to this question because I could make a very wrong answer, and I wouldn't like to have.
But no one will know for 30 years. It's okay.
To have problems with him in 20 years. What I advise to people is to buy what they like, mostly to buy what they like, and in the specialty they like, to buy the most quality things, not to buy average things. It's better to put a big amount of money in quality things than in many things for a small amount of money to each of them.
So spend good money on good quality.
On good quality items, yes. And you never have bad surprises.
Right.
Years after, people who buy average things have always bad surprises because people don't care about what they like 10 years after, 20 years after.
But what about where in France and Paris are good places to find good antiques?
Well, there are several boroughs full of antique dealers. You probably know them.
Absolutely, yes. I know there's in the ninth where you're...
In the ninth where around Drouot, around the main auction house, that Drouot is the biggest auction house in the world for the number of items sold every year.
As in the place where we film?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. It's the biggest in the world. There are 16 rooms selling every day at the same time. So there is no equivalent in the world. And there are some antiques dealer around too. And in Paris, where you can buy very, very wonderful antiques, is in the 6th district, around the Rue de Seine, the Rue Jacob, the Rue de Verneuil, and Rue de Beaune.
And these are the antique shops. These aren't the markets on the street.
There are antique shops, but for very good antiques, very expensive. And also, there are several streets in the 8th district, around the Élysée Palace, the Bristol Hotel, and you can find galleries also in the 9th. In the 9th, far from Drouot, there are many antique dealers, galleries, contemporary art. And if you want to go to flea market, the biggest in the world is also in Paris.
Is it the Saint-Ouen?
Yes, Saint-Ouen is
That's the biggest flea market in the world.
It's the biggest in the world. There is no equivalent to.
Really?
And it's an extraordinary area. You know it.
Yeah.
So it's an extraordinary area because there is an amount of things that you can't compare to anything. So it's very good to walk and to take your time in Saint-Ouen. Prices are quite high, but you can talk with the antique dealers.
Well, that's something I want to talk to you about. Do you feel like the antique dealers maybe would give better prices to the local people? Do you think when they hear a foreign accent, they might think, oh, I can make a few extra euros?
You can have an accent of another region of France.
Oh, yeah? Is that?
No, maybe, I don't know. I can't answer to you because I'm not an antique dealer. Maybe.
Where do you go to get your antiques that you have?
Auctions, only to auctions.
What's the difference? Why?
Prices are lower all the time. Because a lot of antique dealers buy by auction and they sell them to the people after, and they have to make money on them. It's normal, but it's my job, so I know how it works. So I know.
Can you tell me about the feeling when we last met and we recorded the video, and we discovered that you and I are similar. We both really like Paris, and we both really like a lot of the items that you were selling. And I said to you, which item would you like to have in your own collection? And you said, Oliver, I'm not allowed to bid on anything. I can have nothing. How does it feel for you seeing all these amazing items getting sold and you're not allowed to bid on them?
I sell millions of good items every year.
But surely.
So it is impossible to obtain anything I would like to obtain. So it would be a disaster for my mind. I would have psychological problems.
Right.
Because it's impossible. I am a minimalist too. I don't buy a lot of things, and it's something very quiet, tranquil for me not to be allowed to buy in my own auctions. Because it's good for my health.
Otherwise, you would just be bidding on every single piece, right?
Yes, maybe. It would be a disaster.
So tell me, during the big auction that we filmed at a few months ago, there was one item in particular you predicted which would be the biggest seller. It was the elephant, remember?
Yes.
I wonder if there are other, and maybe tell me a little bit about that elephant first. What there was a huge interest in it from around the world? Or?
Yes, from all around the world. It has been bought by an American.
Really?
Yes, from New York.
Maybe they're listening right now.
Yeah, maybe.
What was it exactly? What was the story behind it?
It was an antique shop sign of a shop that built how do you say a billiard? A billiard?
A billiard. Snooker, yeah. Pool or billiards.
A billiard.
Snooker,
yes. It was a billiard merchant, and he was settled down on the Bastille Square in Paris, and
just down the road from here.
Yes, just down the road. And Napoleon III wanted to build an enormous fountain at the beginning of the 19th century on this square. And that the Bastille Square has been created after the destruction of the Bastille jail during the French Revolution. and Napoleon wanted to build a very big monument on the square, and he has chosen the model of an elephant, and it was supposed to become a fountain. So he before to have an exact impression of what it could be, he built a model of it in plaster, and this model survived during 40 years on the square, under the rain, under the wind, under the snow.
Right.
It was very solid. And you know that in Les Misérables by Victor Hugo, Gavroche sleeps in the elephant. This is where he is hidden.
Right.
And Victor Hugo has made a story about that. You know, so the a shop has been called à l'éléphant. It means at the elephant.
Right.
And we have sold this shop sign of the elephant.
So the shop had is that shop still exist today?
No.
Okay, so there was a shop from Napoleon. No, the elephant was from Napoleon's time, and that existed in the Bastille,
Yes.
a big elephant. And this was a model of that elephant
Yes.
outside an antique. Okay,
Yeah,
wow, that's pretty cool. How big was the elephant? The big one?
It was enormous because it was separated in apartments, you know. It was for receptions inside. There were stairs like in the Statue of Liberty, you know.
What? So people went into an elephant in the Bastille?
Yes.
When
it
was this?
Pardon?
How long ago?
It was the beginning of the 19th century, but they couldn't go inside when it was a model. It was supposed to build to allow people to enter in it, but in the model it was impossible. It was not possible because there was no stairs.
Yeah.
But it was the magic of it, you know. It would have been a very nice monument of Paris. It was a very creative monument.
Yeah.
A very creative monument that we could have made instead of this column, which is very classical, and it's something I don't like.
You're talking
you
about
understand me?
The column
because
in the Bastille.
the column
Yeah.
at the Bastille is
Yeah.
an old monument, but I don't like it. It's a very classical monument. In every cities in Europe, you have columns like that. You know? So I would have preferred an elephant. You understand me more now?
I'm getting to know you, Christophe, over this very chocolatey hot chocolate.
This column is not a contemporary monument of the period.
Yeah.
It's an old-fashioned monument, quite bad taste.
Yeah, and it seems to me they're renovating the whole square down there at Bastille at the moment as well.
Yes.
Maybe they're rebuilding an elephant.
I would like,
Yeah.
but I'm a bit sorry of new street lamps that are going to be put
Oh yeah?
on the square, yes, and benches, and I've seen all the photographs.
Oh really? Not a fan. No.
No.
So
no.
tell me,
It's
what?
very classic. It's very old fashion. It has no interest. It's banal.
I've got two more questions for you, and then we'll
Yes.
finish up. Okay.
Yeah.
One is, do you have an item? Oh, by the way, how much did the elephant sell for?
32,000 euros.
Wow. 32,000.
Yes, without the fees. So with the fees, it's maybe 36 or 37.
Goodness me.
Yeah.
Okay, so that wasn't one of my questions. My first of the two questions
Yes.
is there another item that over the past 10 years has left an impression in your memory for some reason? One particular...
That I've sold?
Yeah.
I've sold a meteorite.
You've sold a meteor.
Yes, a Gibbon meteorite for 160,000 euros.
160,000.
160,000 euros.
Where did it land, the meteorite? Did it hit Paris or what?
No. There is a meteorite called Paris. It exists.
Really?
Yes, and I'm going to sell a piece of it in next October.
And so this is the meteorite that's hit the Earth already,
Yes.
and it's called Paris.
Yes, I'm going to tell you why it's called Paris. It's a very nice story.
Tell me.
For people who listen to you. You want me to tell you this story before, or to tell you about the Gibbon meteorite?
You surprise me, whatever you want.
The meteorite called Paris is a very funny story. You know, a man has bought in Drouot one day a lot of minerals, and he has abandoned them in his house. It was in Nantes, in a French city. He has abandoned them in his garage during many years. And one day he opened the box where he put them, and he was quite surprised by the shape of one of the minerals. So he asked the Museum of Natural History in Nantes to tell him about what they could know on this mineral, and they told him it's a meteorite. You have to ask the museum in Paris, and he asked the museum in Paris, and they have decided to classify this meteorite because it's a very rare one that fall on the earth many years ago, and they have decided to ask them to the Commission of Classification of Meteorites in the world to call it Paris, but it never fall in Paris. You know, generally you give the name of where the place.
Maybe it fell in Paris, Texas.
Maybe in Paris, Texas, maybe.
And then, that's a pretty cool story. But what was the other item that you sold for 160,000?
It's a meteorite because one day I went to make an inventory of things after the death of a man who collected meteorites. It was in the 13th district. We were talking about the 13th district. And he had amazing collections, absolutely amazing. And his family has asked me to sell the collection. And it was the first time in the history of auctions in the world that a collection of meteorites was proposed to auction after the death of the collector. Because generally collectors of meteorites do not sell their collections. They're very attached to them. And we have made also during this sale world records all the time. It was a fantastic sale. It was a dream sale.
Wow, that's cool.
Yes.
Okay, we've got to wind up with our last question now. As much as I would love to keep talking about extraterrestrial auctioneering items, but I want to ask you, because like I said, you love Paris, and it's a question I ask all my guests, okay? If for some reason you have to leave Paris, you have one day left in Paris, but for some reason you have to spend the whole day in one arrondissement, one district, which district would you choose and why?
It's very difficult to answer.
I know
Paris from. I like Paris from every corner.
Well, I can't accept that answer.
Yes.
No.
I don't know. Maybe my district. I love my district.
Which is that?
The fourth.
Okay.
Yes,
and
that's the middle of Paris. It's where the heart of Paris beats. Mm-hmm. You know, it's a very. How can I describe my district? It's very hard because I never did that.
You never described your district?
No, I
Now's
never
the perfect
described
opportunity.
it. It's a perfect opportunity. What I like is people are very kind. You know, they are less nervous than in the rest of the city. They are more quiet, and they talk to each other. There is a village life. Mostly, I live in the part of the Forth near the Seine River, you know.
Okay, yeah.
And there is a village life. People talk to each other.
Well, there's literally there's Village Saint-Paul there.
Yes,
well.
yes.
So
this is at the end of my street.
Okay.
Yes.
So what would you do on your last day? Walk around, go to cafes. What would you do on your very last day in the Forth?
In my very last day, you mean?
Yeah,
when I'll be very old.
You're going to be no.
What do you
it's
mean?
tomorrow. They're going to send you away from Paris. How will you spend one day in the Fourth arrondissement?
Walking.
Just
that's
walking.
all. Just walking. The eyes in the sky and on the walls, on the roofs, on the windows.
I like that idea. Okay, well, thank you for spending half an hour with me in a Paris cafe, Christophe.
You're welcome.
And maybe I'll see you in the auction house again soon.
Well, when you want, you're welcome.
Well, there you have it. Another episode of the Earful Tower. I hope you learned something. I hope you go and buy some antiques. I hope you felt like you were sitting in the cafe with us. A little bit noisy at the start, but it calmed down, didn't it? That's what it's like. But there you go, Christophe, and it's Lucien Paris, Lucien, then Paris. You can go and find some treats of your own. Now, as I said, I'm going to get into a little bit about the information about the tour that I did, but first, a little bit of reader email. So Gmail, as I sometimes call it. I got this email just a couple of days ago from Felicia. who is in... Well, I'll just read you the email. She says, "Hi, Oliver. I'm from your hometown of Perth, and I'm loving your podcast. It brings back lovely memories of my visits there, and I'm hoping to plan a longer stay the next time. You've also inspired me to learn French again." Well, that's very humbling. I'm glad to hear that. I heard you mention on your podcast about a month ago that there were a couple of Perth Eiffel Tower fans wanting to grab a coffee. I couldn't find their contact on the Facebook page. Would you be able to put me in touch with them? I'll get to that in a sec. Also, I love the Croque Monsieur tote bag, and I'm a little gutted that it's now sold out. Will it be making a reappearance at some point? Keep up the good work, Felicia. Thank you for the email, Felicia. You bring up a number of good points that I'm going to address. Firstly, the Croque Monsieur is sold out. It's a collector's item, and if I've learned anything about antiques today, it'll be worth more in the future. So I don't think I am going to remake it, but hey, maybe one day. There've been a few emails like that. The problem with the merch stuff is it's just too much work. It's too much work to get tote bags made and then to get them shipped and parceled out. And I was doing it all myself. It just wasn't. It wasn't really. It was just too much work, really. So that's something maybe I'll look into in the future if I ever experiment with those sort of companies that do it all for you. But no, they were collector's items for the moment, Felicia, I'm afraid. But the thing that you mentioned about the Eiffel Tower fans around the world, I've been thinking a lot about ways to improve the community aspect, because I do know now that there are quite a number of listeners to this show around the world, and I do know that they like to meet up in different pockets of the planet. So I actually don't have the Perth, the info address for the people you're talking about. I couldn't find it either. Maybe everyone will have to message me. But what I was thinking is, especially for the members of this show, is to start a new kind of group. And I'm just sort of brainstorming here out loud, but I was thinking to start a new group where little factions of Eiffel Tower listeners around the world could meet up and sort of, discuss Paris or whatever you wanted to do. I'm trying to think of ways to best do that. I'm thinking to sort of do a beta launch for the Patreon supporters on a Facebook page or something like that and see if we can get it going. But I really like the idea, if you guys are members of the book club, I really like the idea of other people being able to post. And in the book club, there are people who are sharing their thoughts, sharing their pictures, sharing how they're meeting authors at book tours around the world that have been in the book club. And I like that idea, and I'm going to experiment ways to make it better. Now that there is a community of Earful Tower listeners, I'm going to experiment with ways to bring it together. So keep your eye on that. If you are the Perth listeners referred to here in this email, then get in touch with me and I'll try and connect you all up. And I love hearing when people are meeting around the world thanks to the Earful Tower. Now, a word from the sponsor, Fat Tire Tours. So this week I did a Fat Tire walking tour. Now usually they do bicycle tours around, all around Paris really, but they also do walking tours, and I did the one in the Latin Quarter. And let me tell you, it was eye-opening, because anyone who listens to this show would know I very rarely stray over to the left bank, and as a result, I don't know it very well at all. So what happened is we met with the tour guide, whose name was Jerome, if you're listening, Jerome, Australian-French guy, and he took us sort of ducking and diving, twisting and turning all the way through the Latin Quarter. And I really liked it. I mean, there's a lot to see over there, and it was nice to have someone who could sort of guide you through it and show you not just some of the big things like the Pantheon, and Shakespeare and Company Bookshop and all those sort of classics, but also to walk you down and find the little secrets, the kind of things that I love. For example, a highlight for me, there is, regular listeners will remember I'm obsessed with the Philippe Auguste Wall, which I traced all over the right bank. But I never really went to the left bank to check it out. And on this walking tour, they take you to a big chunk of it that sort of bursts out onto the road. I think it's on Rue Clovis, the first king of the Franks, if you ever want to go and find it yourself. But that is the kind of thing I like to see on a walking tour. So if you're like-minded, you might enjoy doing the same thing. So go and check that one out. It's called the Latin Quarter Walking Tour for fattiretours.com. And remember, you'll get a 10% off discount if you mention the word Earful. Now, one of the parts of this partnership with Fat Tire that I quite like, actually, is once a month, I'm going to be doing a full episode about one of their sort of day trips. And you might have already heard the Giverny episode that I did where Lena and I went out to Monet's Gardens and sort of I was recording along the way, doing the occasional live walk show for the supporters. The next one that's going to come up is this wonderful tour I did, and I'm mentioning it early because it's going to sell out, and it's only available for summer. But an upcoming episode is going to be me and Lena going out to Versailles, where you might have seen it on Facebook already. They have this like an amazing evening experience where you go into the chateau, the Palace of Versailles, and you can see them all, like these actors dressed up in sort of Revolution time clothes. I don't know exactly how you'd describe it, but Marie Antoinette style, dancing around inside the palace when there's not many tourists in there at all. You go out afterwards, they do a little bit of fencing, which is pretty cool. Pictures on the way soon, but then you get to watch a fireworks display, and they only do it one Saturday. They only do it Saturday night for the 3 months of summer. So I'm going to have a whole episode about that soon, but I'm giving you the heads up now. If you're coming to Paris, you should certainly look into booking that tour because that is a really good one, and it might be a little while before my episode comes out. So go and check that out. I think it's called the Sunset Versailles Tour or the Fireworks Versailles Tour. Check them all out. They got a bunch of tours. They're sponsoring this show. They're a good company. I'm doing tours of theirs pretty much every week, so you might even meet me on one of the tours. Who knows? But it's fattiretours.com. At the checkout, use the word Earful. And go and check my Instagram stories if you want to see some pictures of beautiful doors from the left bank. Anyway, that's it from me. You've been listening to the Earful Tower. Plenty more episodes on the way. I've been very busy recording them. And I look forward to talking to you again on Monday. Au revoir.